From Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA, and the home of hot chicken, it's the Rick Altizer Show. Sit back, buckle up. Rick will talk with the movers, shakers, and creators who put Christ in Christian entertainment. He's a man who's clear so the world can hear. Here's Rick Altizer.
Well, I'm really excited today about my guest. I am in the bus of Mark Lowry.
Yeah.
I'm actually in his bus.
You're in the bus.
We're parked here in the Nashville area.
Yep.
And having a great conversation. Mark, thanks for being on the show.
Well, it's good to be with you, Rick. I didn't even know you had a show.
Well, look at all the things we learned. What are you doing being on my show? Don't you have something important to do right now?
Well, I got a few things I could be doing, but, you showed up and you looked kind of hungry, so I thought I'd, see what you needed.
Thank you so much. So, Mark Lowry, for those of the two people out there who don't know, doesn't like to refer to himself as a comedian. He tells stories, and sometimes the stories have humor in them. And how long have you been doing that?
Well, let's see. I graduated from college in 1980, and I went to Liberty University, which was then Liberty Baptist College. And a guy named Roy Morgan called me. He was graduating that year also, and he said, I would like to book you. And I said, well, great, book me. And come to find out, Roy Morgan could book a pork chop into a synagogue. He booked me in 43 concerts in 41 days right out of college. Took the Baptist Bible Fellowship directory and booked me across the nation and back. It was me in the car with my PA system, my Bose PA system in the back, in the trunk, my polyester suits on a bar across the back seat, and my 8-tracks, cassettes, and albums lined up. And I went from church to church and then got up to about 200 concerts a year, finally settled into, and did that for 8 years. And then Bill Gaither heard about me, and Gary McSpadden was leaving, so I joined the Gaither Vocal Band and did that for 13 years. Plus, I was doing solo at the same time. I was doing both. And then I left, went 5 years just doing solo stuff. Then Gaither called and asked me to come back. For a few years I did that. Now I'm back doing solo. And how long have I been doing this? Since 1980.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Why do you not like to refer to yourself as a comedian?
Well, comedian, usually they tell, like Jerry Seinfeld is a great example of a great comedian. He tells 3 jokes, changes the subject, tells 3 jokes, changes the subject, because you can't ever tell the 4th joke on the same subject. It will always bomb. That's a comedy rule I've learned. But you leave there knowing nothing about Jerry Seinfeld. And then I would hear preachers like come through our church, B.R. Lakin. He would do 20 minutes of comedy before he started his sermon. But it would be stories of where he'd been and what had happened. And it was more, you knew him. You felt like he was your friend. And I enjoy that kind of communication. I like comedy. I like jokes. I mean, they're amusing, but it's funny for funny's sake. To me, it's different. Where a story can take you on a journey, and also it's safer because the jokes are in the story. And if you don't laugh here, it's still. I don't care. I'm still telling the story. It's all about the story. It's not about the humor in the story, and even though that helps me know they're following the story, because you can't laugh if you're not listening. So that's...
How does relationship involve what you do? Relationship, sounds like you're saying, I don't want to be a comedian because I just don't want to come up and tell jokes. I want to have a relationship. I want my audience to know me.
Well, I want to communicate. I want everyone to leave that night having laughed, because they're expecting that. I've been labeled a comedian whether I like it or not, so I'm going to make them laugh. And then I want them also to have had an encounter with God too, which is, I believe, the only way you can do that is through Jesus. And I want to expose him. I want to lift him so high nobody can miss him. But I want to do it through humor, and I want to do it through stories, and I want to do it through experiences in my life, and because we're all we are is walking stories, all of us. And That's why there's a People magazine, because people like to hear about people. That's why Jesus told parables, because people like to hear about people. And so when you tell your story, other humans are going to tune in and they will see themselves in your story. That's the way it works for me.
Now, the humor that's in your story, I've had some comedians on the show and they've talked about the art of comedy, and how you set up a joke and how you tell the punchline, then you have a callback to that punchline later where you
That's fun.
Have you worked on some of the techniques of comedy inside your storytelling, or is the humor something that is just natural to you?
I don't know. I guess it's just natural. Like, I broke 11 bones in a car wreck in 1978. I was sitting in my wheelchair at church, the first Sunday I could go back to church, and I told the whole congregation the story of my van wreck, where the preacher I was traveling with was in a coma for 2.5 months. I broke 11 bones. It's a miracle none of us were killed. And the people were in the floor laughing. It turned into a story I put on a project years ago called Pivot on Your Good Foot. And anybody who knows me knows that story. And then I talked about my ADHD as a child, and Miss Barth, my 6th grade teacher, and how I got kicked out of her class, and all these stories. It's true. Carol Burnett said it right. Humor is just tragedy plus time. Because the best stories I remember are horrible events. Breaking bones, motorcycle wreck. That was one. Anybody out there, Google Mark Lowry motorcycle wreck. And it's one of the funniest stories I've ever told. But it wasn't funny when it was happening.
So did the humor element of that story, did that evolve as you told it, and you found things that worked that were funnier? So right. It's something. So but it's all true too. But the funny is something you work on. It's not just.
Yeah, I would guess. I don't know. When you say work, I don't like go to a club and craft my stuff like comedians do. I'm hearing it. There was a time I told the motorcycle story and I listened to what they laugh at. And I'd do it again. And what they don't laugh at, I might leave that out. It may not be an important part of the story, or it may not relate. Mm-hmm. It's all about moving the story along. And I talk about the Mexican men who helped me off the road that couldn't speak English, and it's true. They really were there. And I turned to these guys and say, "Could you help me off the road?" They say, "We don't speak English. Will you help me off the El Rodeo? I think I broke you on my legio." And they came to me, and they were Jesus to me that day. Uh-huh. And then the ambulance came, and the redneck who pulled up, I was sitting on the road with a broke leg. He said, "Do you need an ambulance?" And I'd lost my hearing. I can't tell the story as good as I've told it on the stage. So it's Mark Lowry motorcycle wreck if you want to see it. But it's like what I used to tell sitting around the table, have translated it to the stage. And once you translate it to the stage, it's hard to tell it sitting around the table, because it has become a monologue now. And if someone interrupts the monologue, it can throw you off. Because once you get all the pieces lined up, you need to let it fall. When you're in a conversation around the table, someone can interrupt and throw everything off.
So it is different.
It is different, but it is the same too.
Well, this is Rick Altizer. You're listening to the Rick Altizer Show, and my guest today is storyteller Mark Lowry. Storyteller and singer, and also songwriter.
Yeah.
We sang in our church just a few weeks ago, "Mary, Did You Know?" a song you wrote. How in the world did you write a standard, like a Christmas standard of all things?
I don't know. 1984, my pastor called me and asked me if I would write the Living Christmas Tree program for our church. And being young and not realizing I couldn't, I said I would. And I wrote this. What I ended up doing is just taking standard Christmas songs and writing monologues for someone to say between them. So that's the only way I knew how to do it. That's how I'd do it, And I wrote this thing about Mary. Stuff that my mother and I had discussed for years. My whole life we discussed these things. About what it was like raising God. What was it like changing God's diapers? What was it like having God nurse at your breast? What was it like teaching the Word of God to talk? You know, and things like that questions that would compress and compact the fullness of the Godhead into an 8-pound bundle, that is hard to do. But as songwriters, that's our job, to deduce the unfathomable into words. And it's impossible, but we sometimes get close. And so I just wrote down a bunch of questions. If I could have a cup of coffee with Mary, what would I ask her? You know, and most of the questions didn't make the song. The only questions that made the song were the ones that rhymed. I'd like to know, you know, what was his favorite kind of music? Did he have a hero? Did he have a girlfriend? Did you ever make him get a haircut? What was it like being his little brothers following him through school? You know, all these things. And so I wrote this lyric in 1984, carried it around to 1991. Just on the back burner. I had a few people try to write music, and it just wasn't working. I don't write music, I just write words. And I handed it to Buddy Green on the Gaither bus, and he thought it was going to be a funny song. You know, he didn't really look at it. When I say I wrote this lyric, see what you can put music to it. And he called me Monday morning, sang it to me over the phone. He wrote it in 30 minutes. And I said, that's it, because the others just weren't right. I know when it's right. I know when I write the lyric, I get to decide what the music's going to sound like, or I get to decide when the music is right, because they must marry. Many great lyrics have been lost because the melody wasn't good enough, and vice versa. So it's got to be a perfect marriage, and I can't take credit for this. If I had done it twice, if I had written a song like this twice, I could take credit. And Buddy Green too. If Gloria Gaither had written the song, it would be one of many. But God let an idiot and a harmonica player write this song that is a Christmas classic, which is, and Bill and Gloria will admit, they have not even accomplished.
How has that, did that take you by surprise, or just how the song just took off?
It did, but not totally, because I knew something was special about that lyric. And when I wrote it, the child that you delivered will soon deliver you.
Yeah, awesome.
On my computer the first time, and I got chills again just thinking about it. I'd never seen that before and never thought of it before. And then I went on to write this child, that when you kiss your little baby, you kiss the face of God. You've kissed the face of God. And I actually had written cheek. You've kissed the cheek, because I thought about kiss your little baby. You've kissed the cheek of God. And a friend of mine suggested face, because that's so much, you know, it's more.
Wow. Yeah, it's just been such a class. It's such an amazing song. But it's interesting you talk about the experience of writing that song. It is similar to what you've discussed, the experience of just being on stage and doing your story. And is there, as you're on stage, is there communion with God? Is there this one ear open to allowing the Holy Spirit to give you words to say?
Every night I ask God to hijack the program. And when he does, it's fun. And sometimes I'm hearing stuff for the first time myself. And I'm hoping I will remember it so I can say it again tomorrow night. That happens. And I don't know how it happens. But I think it's because I've read something and it's stuck in, you know, at the appropriate time you put it in there, and then the Lord will just remind you of it. Oh, that'll fit right there, and then you go over here. It's like a dance. It's like, my concerts are like a patchwork quilt. You don't really know where we're going until you get there.
Do you have the night planned out before you start?
No. I know what the first song will be, and I know what the last song will be. And it's an ADHD rabbit trail getting to it.
Well, but you know, it's interesting because you have to have an open heart to creativity to do that. If you're legalistic, if you're bound with boxes and things have to be in boxes, it's difficult to do that. I mean, that right there are people that you've just described the biggest nightmare, stress out for some people to show up. I lead worship, and so and I'm more like, let's let the Spirit flow, and that really causes panic with some people. How have you seen that with you personally and your own personality?
Well, I do it because I used to write a program out, but then I'd lose it and forget where I put it. Or I'd get out there and think, I don't want to do that. You know, once I got out there and met the audience, because that is a personality. And I always keep the lights up. I don't let the lights go down. I see them. And I walk amongst them. I'm out in the crowd more than I am on stage. Because I want to know them for those 2 hours. I want to speak into them. I want to look into their souls. And you do that by looking everybody straight in the eye at some point during the night, if you can find them and get to them. Usually the crowd can be too big where you can't get to everybody, but nevertheless. And then afterwards, I sit there and shake hands and talk until the last person leaves. So, what was the question?
Well, just talking about some people having that kind of...
See, I know some artists do have their set list, and they do the same set list every night. But I'd learned with Gaither, you don't have to. He's up there calling it as we go. Many nights, I mean, the second half especially with Gaither, he just pick and choose, and the musicians follow. And it always works out.
It's awesome. Now, you've been doing this now for 37 years. You've been a storyteller for 37 years, and you're talking about not retiring, but...
Retreading.
Retreading.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, it's a new chapter where I won't tour as much. Maybe do 1 or 2 dates a month, maybe. Because I've discovered through podcasts, you can reach more people with one podcast than you can touring all year. I have one video clip that's had 5.1 million views.
Now, how can somebody get to your podcast?
Well, it's not. It's going to release in the fall. It's not up yet. It's going to be an NPRS Dinner Conversations with Mark Lowry and Andrew Greer, and we're going to have dinner with friends, talk about God and life and stuff, whatever.
So that's coming up?
That's coming up.
And where can they find information about that?
MarkLowry.com or Mark Lowry on Facebook. MarkLowry.
Okay. And is there just a Facebook page? Just type in Mark Lowry.
Yeah, it should come up.
The guy
with the one with the blue check by it.
Okay. The guy with the glasses, that's him.
Yeah, that's the one that looks like the old man in the Up movie.
Now, you've done some podcasts in the car.
I did do
video blogs.
Car conversations is what I call it with my pastor. We'd drive to hospital visitation with him, and which I love doing. I love doing hospital visitation when I'm home. You know, because I've never seen a miracle. I'm Baptist. We don't get miracles. Pentecostals have hogged all the miracles, so we have to walk by faith. And I figure if you're going to see a miracle, you need to go where they need one. And I'd like to see one. You know, why not? I believe in them. I've just never seen one. And so I will go with him on hospital visitations. We pray for people and stuff. But on the way to each place, I'll just put the iPhone up there and we start recording us video, and we talk about stuff and ponder and pontificate.
Can people find that on YouTube?
Mark Lowry. Well, you can find it on YouTube. Yes, you can. I have a YouTube channel also. And Facebook's the best way to stay with me, though. Okay. Because I update Facebook all the time. I forget all those. I have Instagram and Twitter, but I don't really think to do those. I like Facebook for some reason because you get instant gratification. You can have a thought in the shower when you're talking to God. That's where I pray to God, usually in the shower. And I come running out thinking of some thought that God has given me or whatever. Put it on Facebook, and boom, there's thousands of responses in it seems like seconds. Where used to they had to mail you what they thought, you know. So I love that, and I've got like 385,000 likes now. Excellent. And they had to take me dragging and kicking. I only been on it a couple of years because I thought I don't want to know any more people. I already know too many people. I can't keep up with all of them. But then I realized you could reach a lot of people. Yeah. And you don't have to go over for Thanksgiving dinner. Right. You know, you can still reach them, you know.
So what's this retread part of your life? What's that going to look like?
Well, I think it's going to be 1 or 2 concerts a month, if that. And I'll fly I'll sell the bus, sell the sound system, sell everything, move everything to Houston. My office has been in Hendersonville. Bob Sauer has worked for me 23 years. I'm taking all his stuff back that he's done for me. I'll basically, I'm just kind of scaling it down.
When is this going to happen?
At the end of this year. And so if you really want to see me, you better do it this year.
This year? How many 100 shows this year? You don't even know?
I have no idea. A lot.
And can people find out about your schedule by just going to marklowry.com?
marklowry.com. So I'm not retiring. I don't want anybody to think that. Because the problem with retiring, if you decide to come back, they call you Cher.
Well, I've got an auto-tune thing. I can have you. I can fix you. I can make you sound like a chipmunk too.
What's her song? I don't even know what one of her songs.
You believe in love after love, whatever.
That's
Life
pretty
after
good.
love or whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but you got to sound more like a chipmunk when you do it. So we'll have to do that.
I like her voice. So
we've talked. Before we started the interview, we were talking about grace. And you were talking about choosing to believe. Do you think the fact that you can believe is an act of grace?
Oh, it must be. Because my friend last night I was talking to who used to believe. And he says, I wish I could. He's a lawyer and he went to seminary even. And in seminary he became an atheist. Because it just didn't make sense to him. And I keep praying for him and, all you can do is hope for the best. Because
I have no righteousness of my own.
None.
And so I'm utterly dependent on Christ.
Even the act of faith must be a gift of God.
Yeah. Talk to me about the grace of God and how God turned that light switch on for you in the last 2 minutes here.
Oh, gosh. The grace switch?
How God turned that switch on for you and how you had... Talk about your journey, how you came to faith, and how
I
God did
now.
That.
I've always said I was saved June 5th, 1973 at 9:45 p.m. at a church camp, and I did. That's when I put my stake in the ground, looking back, and said, as for me, I will serve the Lord, right? I'll believe this. I was 14. But looking back now, I think I've loved him since the day Mama told me his name. And I can't remember a day when he didn't occupy some of my thoughts, if not most of them. I mean, I'm not holy, I'm not spiritual, I'm curious. And God knows I have ADD, and if he doesn't stay interesting, I'll be on to the next thing. But the more I discover him, the more lovely he is, the more kind, the more in our corner. And there are diamonds everywhere if you look for them. And usually I don't pay attention until I have a motorcycle wreck. That's the reason those stories, or, I'm not really paying attention until I hit Shepherd Drive face first without a helmet. But at least I pay attention. And on the way down to Shepherd Drive face first without a helmet, I told myself, stay awake. You don't want to miss this. I hate to miss anything, especially if it's happening to me. So I didn't want to become unconscious. And I paid attention, and I got a great story out of it. Because to me, life is boot camp. This is boot camp. This is where we get to learn to walk by faith. We're not home. This isn't home, but it's to be enjoyed and not endured, and to be lived and love this earth, not destroy this earth, be a good steward of this earth, because we've been given custodian, those types of things. We're not just here until the rapture, which I don't know. John Darby came up with that doctrine 150 years ago. I don't even know if it's true. The church fathers believed in the second coming of Christ, but they knew nothing of a rapture. And my mother used the rapture as her sit in the corner and hold on till Jesus comes. That's not what Jesus said to do. Be salt and light. Turn the light on. And that's what I try to do through songwriting. My job is just turn the light on. I'm not here to convince you, really. I'm going to turn the light on. And where you're seated, you'll see what you need to get.
Well, I have enjoyed this very much enjoyed our conversation. And you can get more information on Mark at marklowry, LOWRY.com. Mark, thank you for sitting here on your bus and talking to me.
Thank you, Rick. My pleasure.
The Lord is merciful and gracious.
The music you are listening to is from my scripture memory record, and I want to give it to you for free. Just go to my website, rickaltizer.com, and click Contact. Altizer is spelled Altizer. Or how about liking my Facebook page, facebook.com/Rick Altizer Show. I want to thank Paul Winkler, the investor coach, for sponsoring this show, and I want to thank you for listening. So be sure to check us out again next week as we discuss how we communicate the gospel through media to our culture. Let's be clear so the world can hear. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.